Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of 2Costa Rica Real Talk, 2Costa Rica Real Estate's podcast on all things real estate and Costa Rica. And today we're joined by Scott Williams, our crypto expert and Southern Zone real estate agent, as well as Sergio Chaverri, CEO of Aya Capital. How are you doing today?
Very good.
Excellent. Thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Thank you. It's great having you. Particularly excited about your insight and expertise on the topic of crypto transactions, which we'll be dealing today. But perhaps first of all, to our listeners, Sergio, I wanted you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about Aya Capital and particularly its crypto arm, Block Access.
Yes, sure. Aya Capital is a family office. We are three partners based in Costa Rica, Mexico, and London. We focus on alternative investments, and in fact, we lead a family office community founded in London with more than 1,400 members, ultra high net worth individuals, family offices looking for alternative investments, and we are the chapters leaders here in Latin America. So during the last 12 months, we have been inviting family offices and high net worth individuals to look for different type of alternative investments. We have a crypto arm, like you said, called Block Access. It's like a crypto concierge to focus on that target, family office, high net worth individuals looking for crypto transaction and leveraging on our expertise to help them with their requirements that, as I will explain during the podcast, is different type of needs for that type of audience.
Very good. Sergio, when we first met and we first started working together, there was a few things that I found very interesting that gave me a good bit of confidence in working with you, particularly your fintech background, the fact that you've worked in multiple jurisdictions. It seems that you've become very well positioned for what you're doing now, but through an organic path where, there's a lot of people now sort of jumping on the crypto bandwagon, but your background professionally seems like it's positioned you pretty well for what you're doing today.
Yes, thank you. I love technology. I used to have an electronic invoicing company across 15 countries here in Latin America. So I have been in the technology space, crypto space for more than 6 years. So you always need to learn a lot to explain or educate about innovations. And in my previous company that I sold in 2021, I had the chance to raise capital with family offices, and I love that combination: technology, innovation, family office, investment needs, and now we're using all that for this new venture that started in 2021 specifically.
I wanted to follow up on that. Scott mentioned dealing through different jurisdictions, and I wanted to focus specifically in how's the process of setting up a company that deals with crypto in the Costa Rican landscape. How's the reception process, and how's also the operational structure in a way?
Yes, our main infrastructure for Costa Rica is based in the U.S. because you will find there liquidity pools, banks. We also operate with an MSB licensed company in the U.S. For this type of transaction, you have to be really compliant, and the U.S. jurisdiction is the one that is more prepared or mature. Here in Costa Rica, what we do is usually work with them, and we connect through, for example, through an escrow company, depending on the needs, and with some local lawyers to prepare the infrastructure that is very tailor-made for each transaction, and mix regulations in the U.S. and here in Costa Rica with all the KYC requirements, compliance requirements, and everything to make the transaction as smooth as possible, and always compliance with local regulation.
Yeah, and Scott, I wanted actually to ask you, as Sergio was mentioning, the importance of dealing with escrow and compliance and trust services. How important, particularly in a market like Costa Rica that still relies on U.S. jurisdiction, how important is working with company like Aya Capital that exudes like this sense of like trust?
Well, I think it's crucially important. I think there's two big factors to keep in mind there. One is I think the nature of most Bitcoiners and crypto people. They tend to be very anti KYC. They're really sort of sovereign and independent people, and they're many times they feel quite bothered by that stuff, but they understand that, and this is where Sergio's company is adding value, is that when we're working in a scenario where the seller or the recipient of the funds does not want crypto, and they need to be paid in their national currency, they need to be paid in dollars, they need to be paid in colones, whatever the case may be, there needs to be a legitimization process. There needs to be channels, there needs to be mechanisms where when that seller is receiving their funds, they're not at risk for then being under scrutiny. They're not at risk for depositing that into their bank. And having these things set up allows a seller to go into the process confidently. So I think you start with a Bitcoin or crypto buyer who might be perhaps have a little bit of friction just by nature of how that person operates, but quickly understanding and knowing that in order to get to the end of the transaction and purchase the property or purchase the asset at the end, they have to be able to go through these legitimization channels for the other half of the transaction to be satisfied. It's crucial. So it's something where he's doing the hard work, right? Like every Bitcoiner wants to say, oh, we can transact within the ecosystem, or let me just find a seller who wants to take Bitcoin, or eventually the system will capitulate and they're going to come to us and we're going to revolutionize everything and get rid of central banking. Well, maybe, let's hope, but we're far from that time. And in the meantime, we have to be able to create this marriage and integrate a different system which looks into the future to a current legacy system that is still the dominant operating structure.
And what are perhaps like not really challenges, but like how's this process of like guiding like someone that wants to deal in crypto through this like process as from in the real estate sense and also in terms like of what block access offers?
Yeah, there are two things, and also complementing what Scott was saying. For example, for a Bitcoiner that usually start very early, 2010, 2012, they are sometimes scared to let somebody else know, hey, I have the equivalent of $1 million, $10 million, or whatever in crypto. When we sit down with them and they realize that we are used to work with ultra high net worth individuals, that we interact with family offices in London, for example, from Switzerland, that has some of them billions of dollars, they feel more comfortable because they say, okay, these guys are used to see that, so I will be one of them. I'm not going to be like the millionaire of the neighborhood. That's one thing. And the other thing, we try to make it as smooth as possible, understanding their needs. And now that you were saying about the buyer that wants to pay with crypto and the seller wants $1, a couple of weeks ago I found out here in Costa Rica in the coast the opposite scenario. That was a buyer that wants to pay in a traditional way. However, the seller said, hey, I want Bitcoins. So help me to receive those dollars, but I don't want them to touch my bank account. You change it and send it to my private wallet. So now we are starting to see both scenarios in different type of combinations.
And you were able to navigate that. Your business was able to provide that service, that solution?
Absolutely. In fact, we're now focusing on real estate because of the podcast nature, but the asset is also very interesting. We have done here with luxury cars, yachts, private jets. We could make a podcast about the different type of luxury asset that we have enabled through crypto.
Very good. One question as well too, because I hear this mentioned again and again, the ultra high net worth individuals and the family offices, and I think that brings a ton of legitimacy. Do you have clients? Because sometimes maybe we have clients who have a smaller budget, or maybe they're working with 10 bitcoins, they're waiting for Bitcoin to hit a certain price point, and then at that point they make their purchase. Are you able to work with a variety of different clients, or is really the focus mainly the upper echelon and the higher transaction numbers?
We try to focus on $100,000 as the minimum transaction size, because we are not a retail company. We offer a very personalized service. There's a joke we use internally that we said, "Hey, we are the wealth management department of the crypto space." So that's our main focus. And for retail things, like for example in Dominica, that I saw the Bitcoin Jungle initiative, that's something really cool. But our target is not that; it's completely the opposite.
Very good. Yeah, your business model isn't high volume retail necessarily. It's more of a concierge, very specific customer service base. Yeah.
Yes, and we leverage both worlds. For example, the traditional ones, because we're talking about the Bitcoiner that right now he has millions of dollars, and probably in 1 year tens of millions of dollars because of the Bitcoin price, for example. But we are starting to see the opposite, that is traditional family offices from the more traditional ecosystem that are starting to say, hey, in my portfolio diversification, I would like to buy $10 million in Bitcoin, $5 million in Bitcoin. Please help me to on-ramp it in a secure way using my tax strategy. And eventually, I would like to know that I count with you when it's the moment to off-ramp in a secure way. So that's starting to happen this year also.
Very good. And in those scenarios, when you're taking a client who is looking to create or expand a Bitcoin position, is that an over-the-counter situation? Or are you working with a specific exchange? Does it depend on the transaction and the jurisdiction?
We are always working over the counter, and because it's more personalized. However, we have a partner in the UK where they will be able to create their own account and to do it directly. It's like a digital crypto bank where we know the owners. We have a very good relationship, and people doing transactions in Europe in euros or in pounds, we refer them, or we do it through them, to be more specific, but 100% over the counter.
Very good.
And I want to ask you, within this realm that you work with, in terms of like high-end and ultra luxury, what types of crypto does Block Access works with? As you mentioned Bitcoin, for example, but are there also like others?
Yes, the key element is that we need a crypto that has enough liquidity. Because sometimes I had a story of a real estate transaction, and they were trying to buy an asset here, but with a coin that was like a joke. And I told the seller, hey, you can't do it because there's no liquidity. Usually I would tell you probably top 10, top 50 you could get into coin market cap and see them. What we try to do is to use a stable coin during the transaction, like USDT or USDC, that are the most used. Because imagine Bitcoin, for example. Last time I checked, the price was around 62,000. And if you know Bitcoin right now could be 65, 67, or the opposite, 55. Sure. So when you're doing a transaction involving millions of dollars, that price fluctuation sometimes is difficult. So what we suggest sometimes is, hey, you swap yourself, you take your time to see the best moment, get the price. I joke with my clients, get angry with yourself, not with me regarding the exchange, and you send me a stable coin, and that's always one-on-one $2, so there's no change. However, if for some reason they want to send us Bitcoin, Ethereum, or a volatile coin, it's okay, and we are very transparent. Okay, we receive it, we're exchanging, here's a screenshot, this is the price, this is the US dollar, and we move forward.
And how recurrent would you say this kind of crypto wallet-to-wallet transactions are in the Costa Rican market?
It depends usually on the on the on the stage of the market, because for example in after COVID, well, during 2020 when the prices went up, we start doing a lot of transactions. We did some partnership. The market was really active. Then the price went down and almost anything, and it's natural because imagine to have a one Bitcoin that the value is $60,000 and a couple of months ago is $15,000. So you want to keep it and not to touch it because you know what's going to happen in 2 years. So this year, when the price came back to 60,000, we touched 70,000, the all-time high. People start contacting us. The market start moving again, and this is just starting. We think that this second half of the year and 2025 is going to be probably really active because of the liquidity of the market.
Yeah, we're anticipating the same thing kind of in real estate markets as well too. I think a combination of the halvening cycle, U.S. presidential election cycles, interest rate changes. I mean, those are some big macro level events that I think is probably going to increase the number of transactions that all of us will be working on with together. Don't know the exact timing of that, but in any or all of those factors will probably mean more business for us, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And we are already seeing that and having conversations, so it's going to be a really active
I think it
year.
is. I think it is as well.
Correct.
And with the increase of volume also comes perhaps some challenges in the way as like not all the people you will be dealing with are like original like Bitcoiners or like long time like cryptos. Perhaps like with the increase also comes like some people are doing like their first transactions with crypto. What are perhaps some first initial guidelines for someone that wants to do like their first crypto transaction?
Well, depending on the transactions, for example, we had a client this year that was on ramping or buying crypto. So what we explained him was, look, try to have it on a cold wallet because you will have complete control. However, there's a responsibility with that because there's no customer service to call in case something happens. Other ones are using like institutional vaults, like it's like a middle terms, like for example, BitGo, Fireblocks, those type of companies. The other thing is in the opposite, to have like a due diligence regarding the source of funds, the review the coins in the blockchains with tools like Chainalysis, like Elliptic, just to make sure that those coins are clean. This is important because sometimes people say, hey, but in crypto you could do things and great things or bad things, but the traceability you have in crypto is amazing, and the advantage that the blockchain offers are great. So you have a lot of compliance tools that the majority of financial institutions are not taking advantage, and in my opinion at least, is more secure and traceable than traditional transactions.
You touched on an important point there that might be key interest for our audience. Does your company or your affiliates, are there issues with working with CoinJoin coins or something that's gone through kind of a mixer? Does the visibility, the blockchain visibility, need to be completely linear, or how far does it have to go back, or what's the criteria? Of course, with we would like to believe that all the coins are fungible, but some of them might have different past than others. So what's the criteria for that?
We usually leverage on tools like Elliptic or Chainalysis to review the coins. The deal breaker usually happen when that specific coin touch a wallet that has been vetted because of illicit activity or something like that. So that's more on a case by case basis. But we try to usually enable transactions because we are business people dealing with business people, for example, the buyer, the seller, the real estate company, and we understand that that's part of our job. However, there are always limits that you need to take care.
Yeah.
Touching upon on that, I wanted to ask you about like also the importance of like, particularly in Costa Rica, where crypto is still like establishing itself and has grown over the last couple of years. How important that is like acknowledging and identifying like alliances, so potential like strategic alliances you can have with like, for example, real estate firms or like escrow services, like not only in terms of like business, but also aligning yourself and how you all see crypto like in the same way. Like there's no perhaps speculation.
100%. I believe in partnerships since the beginning of my professional life. In my previous company, I work a lot with partners, with Microsoft partner program, things like that. And now I'm applying that. We have an initiative called Trust Network that we have been doing since 2021, trying to onboard serious companies, real estate companies, lawyers, accountant, supplier. Because when I'm from Costa Rica, I was born here, I travel a lot, but I have businesses in different countries. However, I'm 100% Tico, so I always try to defend Costa Rica. And for me, it's very sad when there's an investor that comes here, brings money, wants to do investment, to create jobs, to incentive the economy, and bad things happen. So I always try, at least, that when I see people doing investments, I'm very active, make sure that he's with the right, call it the right lawyer, the right accountant, the right real estate company, in terms of serious company. Because sadly, here in Costa Rica, you find people that doesn't have good intentions, and that affects everybody.
Yeah, there's bad actors in every space and in every place. I think that with you being Costa Rican and you're biased in that regard, and I've been here for half my life, and I'm biased because I feel very blessed to be here. And you having worked in several different places, are there any things that are specific to Costa Rica that you might tell a Bitcoiner who is, say they consider themselves a world citizen or a sovereign individual, and they're looking at Dubai, they're looking at El Salvador, they're looking at someplace in Europe. What would you say Costa Rica has, knowing that you've worked in many places, you've done business in many places? What would you say to an audience who's considering multiple destinations as to why Costa Rica is a friendly place for them to come, or an attractive place for them to come?
Yes, probably the most important thing is the nature, the environment, because now during these days it's a luxury in some places to be able to have vegetation around, to have a river, to be, depending where you live, the beach in front of you or 1 hour away in case you live here, mountains. Yeah. So that's right now a luxury. That's a very important thing. Point number one. Point number two, is a very stable country regarding the politics and everything. It's a country focused on tourism, so we really understand in general
how to make foreigners feel welcomed.
Exactly, yeah. And that's in our nature, in our DNA. Regarding Bitcoiners, where you need to be also, probably not careful is the right word, but you need to make your own strategy, is that it's not like in places like in El Salvador where I have Bitcoins, go everywhere and do it very, very open. And here you have to really choose the financial institutions, your advisors, and everything, just to make sure that you do it properly and in a way that is effective to you. Because otherwise, here crypto It's not illegal. There was a study published by the Central Bank of Costa Rica. However, if you don't do it properly, you could get money stuck for months and have bad experiences.
Right. Again, a big part of the reason why using a very well established, very well partnered organization is great when you're coming in, because then that way you can make sure not only you have the right team, but the supporting infrastructure is there, integrating into whatever it might be, local banking and other rails. You can do that. Just as we're bringing people in to come and live here, we want to make sure that they know where the best social activities are, where the best providers are, where the best schools are. So I think that's one of the nice things that people that are Bitcoiners, because it's basically an international community, as they come in, they can meet people like you and people on our team and know that they're almost immediately becoming a part of a Bitcoin community, because we've been Bitcoiners for a long time, where you're a native here, I'm not a native here, but over time we're sort of building this together, and they can come in and sort of feel like a little bit of a local even from the beginning.
Yes, absolutely. And for example, an advice that you could give regarding real estate is maybe, hey, watch out, this land doesn't have water, for example, or be aware of this. In the crypto space, we could do the same regarding regarding tips, best practices, things like that.
Yeah, very good.
And perhaps to round off the podcast, I want to ask perhaps each one of you to share with us perhaps a small and short a success story of dealing with crypto transactions on your area.
Go ahead, Sergio.
Yes, maybe two short stories. One is a U.S. guy, third generation, from a public listed company in the U.S. He wanted to buy crypto, so we helped him buy several millions of dollars. After that, he relocated here, at least for a couple of months, bought a house, bought a motorcycle. He took advantage of the Bitcoin increase, of the price increase, and we helped him as an on-ramp company, and then as a crypto concierge, because at the end of the day we help him as a pay master. And right now he is in the US, but he continue asking us to buy things, to buy luxury cars. So that's a very interesting story. And another one from South America, traditional company. It's a family office. They export flowers, and in some countries they start to pay him in crypto, and he didn't knew what to do. However, he's part of our family office community, and he knew us, so we help him receiving that crypto, exchange it to dollars, and then we send it to the bank accounts that he needed, but in a very secure way. So this is an on-ramp, the first one, and off-ramp, the second one.
It's a two-way street.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Yeah, I think, maybe something that comes to mind was in 2017, I facilitated a transaction for a day trader. I honestly don't know that many successful day traders. I know a lot of people who have tried, not that many people who have a lot of success in it. But he was successful, and we were able to help he and his family purchase a great house in the Dominical area. He has since become a friend, and as his holdings grow, he diversifies into other assets, and we've been able to help him with a number of things, purchases in the Central Valley and the Guanacaste area. It's nice to see the repeat business. I think it's always a great testimony, just as what you mentioned there. There's no better testimony than someone who comes back and returns to do more business with you, I think. So I anticipate, and there's been many other examples, but I anticipate actually, I think this bull run that we're going to be getting in, but some would say we're already in, but certainly it's going to be much more evident, the upside, the increased buying power that the crypto community will have. I think we're going to see a really nice movement here. And I'm just excited about helping build the community. I just have such a great connection, shared values with the people in that community. And, anytime we're bringing neighbors here, you always want it to feel like you're bringing quality people, and that's always great.
Yes, and it's also a win-win, because at the end of the day, the people come off-ramp, for example, are able to buy a real estate or multiple houses, meet new people, do different type of business, diversify their portfolio when they are around of serious people. So it becomes the second home for vacations, and sometimes they do better than in their first home regarding businesses and income.
Yeah.
Well, and if our listeners want to perhaps immerse themselves in these subjects, where can they reach you?
Yes, you could reach us at ayacapital.vc, VC from venture capital, and in there's a form, and you're able to contact us there.
Very good.
Thanks for the insightful conversation and for coming to the podcast.
Thank you very much
Thanks
for the
hosting
invitation.
us. Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
And if you enjoyed the conversation, you can follow us on social media at 2Costa Rica Real Estate in all your favorite platforms, as well as following 2Costa Rica Real Talk in all streaming platforms.